My kids are. So the thing about like people saying like there's you're voting for the lesser two evils, I think that might have been true in like 1992 and 1996 to some degree, but right now you're voting for evil. Like we elected
Oh, yeah.
evil and there's not evil. Those are the choices. It wasn't two evils and a lesser of. There's one that's very clearly an evil and we fucked up. I spent my class 45 minutes was ranting about Trump, and the next 30 minutes was explaining how marketing people can use behavioral economics to manipulate you into making irrational decisions. So I feel like I'm all of a piece today. Anyways, welcome to 2 Month Review, a weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter at the University of Rochester. We take some books, we break them down, we talk about them. Well, we're still allowed to have books, to be honest, and they're not all banned. Have jokes, analyze, blah, blah, blah. Chad posts from Open Letter Books, joined as always by Brian Wood, whose Joytime Killbox was the subject of our last episode.
Yeah, yeah, that seems like a long time ago.
Right, it seems like a lifetime ago. And joined by Kai Stramanis, senior editor at Open Letter Books, translator from Latvian. And that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I have 2 months left until I'm just reduced to woman. So
Yeah. I mean, hopefully next time you won't be able to vote. It'll just be one household, one male voice. And you won't have any.
Hi, how far is it to Canada for you to get your abortions?
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
curious. As
I
a
mean,
asking for a friend, asking for a
my,
friend.
my students talked about stocking up on Plan B because it has a long shelf life. So
Wow, man, this is the brave new world, huh?
I,
Jeez.
yeah.
I mean, there's like reason to be very pessimistic this time. I mean, these people have had 8 years to plot out how to lead local elections through appointing judges that are going to produce like the right rulings for their desired outcomes. I mean, I think this is not the 2016 presidency. I think this is the like a much more fascist.
Before
Uh,
we get into important things like books, though, can we agree, though, the worst part of all of this and the big fallout in all of this is tech bros and Bitcoin. Oh no. Oh no. The fact that they're doing well now. And if we can't empower Cybertrucks and
no,
yeah.
I mean,
I
there's
mean, women's reproductive rights, I get it. Human beings being displaced. Yeah, yeah, I get it. Ripping families apart, sure. But just having to hear tech bros, oh, I don't that's the tragedy. I
I'm
think
waiting
That's
for
gonna be the
Elon to.
worst. Can I put Plan B in my ear canals? Is that
Oh my
help?
God. Oh my God. I'm waiting for the day that Elon just declares that instead of the gold standard, we're on the crypto standard and our money is tied to Dogecoin.
I can't wait though to have
Which I still
my healthcare is going to cover TRT once RFK gets in there and gets in charge. I'm gonna
I'm so
yoke
glad we
up
won't
like
have any more vaccines. Like I don't have to do that fucking flu shot shit anymore.
Yeah,
Like they
you
don't
and our
work.
6-year-old super happy never to ever have to have a shot
I
again.
mean, not gonna get autism.
I fit three bears in the back of a Cybertruck and I picked them up at the side of Central Park and drove them with an electric vehicle through a boring company with the brain in mind.
Yeah,
That's
this
What?
is someone who's like who should be having
God.
Parkinson's, whatever it is that he's going through, but
I think it's awesome. He's in charge of all of the alphabet
Yeah,
organization.
no shit. It's like every
Perfect.
organization that you can name. NIH, HIN, NEA, who cares? Fucking give it to RFK Jr. He seems like an outstanding, normal human being.
he knows a lot about grasshoppers.
Yeah, there's no more expertise in this country. Expertise is over.
Out of
So
curiosity, when did you stop drinking last night?
3:30 in the morning.
All right, I assumed you were drinking. I stopped around 1:30 and I fell asleep to a documentary about Babylonian cuneiform. And that was a much better way to fall asleep, I'll tell you that.
I
Yeah.
I was up. I got phone call from our former co-host Katie, waking up in Spain and being like, "What the fuck just happened?" And explain that. And as I was doing that, and like being like, "I don't know, man." There's an announcement on the TV that Trump was going to make an acceptance speech or address the crowd, but it was an acceptance speech. So I waited for that. And then in that, I recorded a minute or two of it in which he goes, oh, Elon, he's like, Elon, everyone starts chanting Elon. He's like, Elon, a new star is born. Elon is amazing. I saw his rocket 2 weeks ago. He was campaigning in Philadelphia. I saw his rocket. It was beautiful. It's this big, beautiful rocket, big white rocket goes into
Is he
space.
talking about his penis?
And then it returns, and he's like, I see it land, and it's 22 stories. It might look small, but Elon's rocket is really big. And I was like, I'm all for more homoeroticism in daily life and kissing, but no, just fuck you. And then I went
There's all
on
the
Twitter and
fellatio with the
immediately
mic.
got banned.
That
Immediately got
is,
banned on
yeah,
Twitter.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's-
as you
What
do.
were you saying, Brian?
Oh, at his last rally in Philadelphia, or not in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, there was a lot of phallic fellatio type imagery with his microphone.
Oh
Oh,
yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Adjusting the microphone with his mouth, and it was very like
The
he was
last
wait,
one
he
that
was
I saw,
adjusting it with his mouth?
he was like,
basically, but
Was he,
I don't know how to do
was he,
memes, but
was he
or
deep throating
gifs,
the
but
microphone?
this is just
yeah,
meme and gif heaven.
yep.
We got that to look forward to.
We've got a lot of that. I mean, I like the Nick Kroll bit where he's like, look, if you're going to vote for Donald Trump because you think that he's entertaining and says stuff, like, we should just give him a podcast network or a late night show. He's like, send him on tour. I'll fucking open for him. Like, he's not a president. You can just like let him say crazy shit. Yeah, that fellatio thing was crazy. Also, after he talks about Elon's rocket, he says, well, I was at this rally, the one that you're referring to. He's like, we're
It's
never
a
going to have to
beautiful
have those
rocket.
again. Beautiful big rocket, big beautiful rocket, big white beautiful white rocket. He says we're never going to have those rallies again because I've won and I'm going to make it right for all of us, which is like just haunting. Like as a statement. I mean, there's nothing you can't put anything past him. We have years of data on what this person wants to do and is capable of. And now that he has full immunity and knows it walking into office, I think this is the worst election outcome ever for America.
Well, it was unprecedented in that there would be whoever wins, there was a below 50% approval rating either way. Like,
Yeah.
so I get that, but one is evil, just evil.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
the one thing
Undeniable.
I do like though is I've always disliked um, Elon Musk. I know you've shared that as well.
Hate that
Um,
man.
I really though this coming out of Northern California, the amount of like Teslas you would see out there is just it's it's just you're choked with it. Just choking on Elon's thrust of technology. Um,
Elon's
but
metal wagon.
and they're always like they've got a KQED sticker and NPR sticker on it, and it's that ilk. And I'm just wondering how people feel like charging their Tesla. Like, shit,
Yeah. So
man.
one of my students
like
in class also said they would never date someone who drives a Tesla ever
like
again.
it's
They
because
did one.
that's a very starting off that was like a very liberal car, like a liberal. It's like, you know what, I've upgraded from the Subaru. I'm going now to the Tesla, and that has been just absolutely ruined,
I
dog
can't
shit ruined.
I can't support anyone who has a Tesla or a Starlink. I'm done. If you support Elon Musk, you're out of my life.
Oh, oh man.
I am a dissenter. I don't want to stick around and help fight and make things better or like win back the White House in 4 years. I don't want to stick around. I'm old.
Are you not excited that we have a con man, a confidence man that made his way
Nice
into a
segue.
place of power?
I
Because
know. I mean,
that's
could we not have chosen the most perfect book for like the post? Like both JD Vance and Donald Trump are like admitted grifters. And we're reading for this, the first part of this season is on Confidence Man by Herman Melville. You can have this edition or other editions. There's a bunch of them. But yeah, it's a book just all about grifters. Everyone's grifting. Everyone's trying to take advantage of someone else. In the wild times, the 1800s, when like bandits roamed the earth and like it's pre-Civil War. It's like just a true Wild West of snake oil and grifting. And we've got JD Vance and Trump, like literally the two most well-known of grifters in our contemporary society in office. And this is the book that we're going to talk about, which is it's a very Christian book in a weird,
Mhm.
in a lot of ways, also a very Hindu book, but it is like It's just too perfect. I did not think of this. I did not expect this.
It's so strange. Like it makes me think of if we think Christian, or we can think Jewish. But if you go like far enough back into the books of wisdom in the Bible, Ecclesiastes,
That's
and
part of this section.
yeah, and there's that wonderful verse. I'll paraphrase it, but it's like vanity of vanities, there is nothing new under the sun.
Hmm.
And I always find it very interesting that a book written, I don't know, 4,000 years ago, I don't know how long ago it was, somewhere in that range-ish. I'll get slaughtered when somebody researches it, but a book that's like 3,000 years old saying there's nothing new.
Yeah.
If it can
Yeah.
be done, it's been done. They're saying that back then. And then you keep seeing the same things over and over and over again. You're like, vanity of vanities, there is nothing new under the sun. We get a snake oil salesman. It does this, it does that. Drink this tincture and it'll cure your typhus. Ooh, that bunion.
Ivermectin. What is however you
How
say it. Yeah.
many ads do you get for AG1, Groons, this redwood? Like, if I just get my gut biome
Epic.
correct, grounding, why don't you lay down on, like, I am constantly bombarded with the next thing that's going to say, eat like a caveman and live past 37,
Yep.
or whatever it is. The Liver King. It's always somebody, always something. It never changes. It's all the same.
It's one of the best parts of the If Books Could Kill podcast is they're kind of like one book theory, where almost every one of these books, these airport sort of self-help books that they cover, are all the same book in which they're like, you know how you make a lot of money? You write a book like this that tells people how they can make a lot of money by writing a book like this. It's just the
Rich
same thing.
dad, poor dad.
Worst thing I've ever heard discussed on there. That book is horrifying.
It's all
Horrifying.
grifters.
It's all grifters. It's grifters all the way down. This is the world we live in. Fuck this. So, Kaya, what did you think of Confidence Man? Let's take some broad views. And this might be worth going through chapter by chapter because it's very slippery. Like this book is very slippery on like what is
Yeah.
happening and who is who.
Yeah, so I read maybe the first 5, 10 pages and then downloaded the audiobook because I could not focus. I could not do it.
Too drunk.
No, just too politics. This was last night. And I will say, so I did not read the footnotes because I consulted them a little bit, but I that was part of the thing for me that was making it too distracting. And I kind of feel that I think my stance is going to be that he wrote it without the footnotes.
Dude, they're super helpful. I hate
I know they're
footnotes.
super, I know they're super helpful, but I kind of want to experience it without the hints and the aids a little bit. Also, it really lends itself well to being read out loud, whoever the
Really?
person who's reading it, like that's also making it easier. Also, because I've read it like once and listened to it once, so I'm having it regurgitated. But other than that, yeah, I don't have a whole lot of an idea of what the fuck is going on, and that might be part of it because um Hi, Isaac. That might be part of it, because, or part of the intent, because like you guys keep using the words like slippery and snake oil, and it is supposed to be confusing, and the ways the character who goes in to talk to the captain, I think, who's like, "Don't you know me? Has it been that long? How can you not recognize me?" Like, bro, it hasn't
Yeah.
has I haven't changed that much. Like this whole, I think there is supposed to be a feeling of false familiarity. Anyway, I am rambling, but I don't really know where we stand right now. I don't know where I stand. There are a couple of lines that popped out that I can see why people get Melville tattooed on their bodies. But the one note that I have, I like reading this makes me so much more aware of how much of a genius Rodrigo is in writing. Like this could be his book. His book could be Melville. Like yes, the language isn't that same vintage, but the rhythm, the cadence, the commas, the everything, like Jesus Christ. I don't know, Brian, if you could ever mimic to that point. Like we were talking last week about borrowing or mimicking styles from other authors and other pieces, but this is like it's such a good duplicate. Like this is like fake passport, fake ID level shit. Like he's like Rodrigo's good. He's really, really good.
Yeah, and we will. I mean, obviously, we'll be getting to that in 5 weeks or 4 more weeks to like
Yeah.
really break down his Melville. The Moby Dick opens with 1 billion epigraphs, very similar to Rodrigo's book. So it's like it's always been there too, in
Yeah.
terms of like that sort
But
of
this is like,
over the topness.
yeah.
What did you think, Brian? Have you read this book before? Like, I guess, yeah. Have you encountered this? Because it is a weird Melville book. It's the last book published in his lifetime. He dies shortly thereafter. I think, well, not shortly after. He dies quite a while after. He's just not writing novels so much. Um, yeah.
I'm
So
not well read. Oh, go ahead.
it's published in 1857. He
Yeah, I was
dies
gonna say.
in like 1891. So he lives for a number of years, but it's like not super popular and is also like it's really dismissed in America, but loved on the continent. And that sort of changes things. But generally, it's like people talk about Billy Budd, Moby Dick, Pierre, and Bartleby. And this doesn't show up on any of those
Yeah,
lists.
I've only read two works from him, Moby Dick and Billy Budd.
Hmm.
Uh, both are
Bartleby?
like
Not Bartleby?
no, both are like ridiculously good. And I haven't read Melville in a minute. It's been a long time. And I was absolutely startled at how stinking good Melville is at writing. It's ridiculous. Like he's
It's
really good.
This is so
Um,
crisp and clear. I
well,
think,
like I went back and I was reading some like river literature of Mark Twain, for instance. And I went back to look at some of his writing just to kind of I know Twain's a little bit later.
Mhm.
But it gave me like the vibe of when we read like Innocents Abroad.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There's grifters that are, taking taking advantage of people. Or I was looking at a like two ways of looking at a river from his collection. And to hear reading it out loud, to hear the difference and see the difference of Melville and Wayne, like I don't know, for American literature, Melville is like it's like Beethoven or something, where
Yeah.
like yeah, you can yawn at it and like, it's not like, but there is a shadow that is long, and if you're writing in America, like you are under that shadow whether you know it or not. Like it is unbelievable how good the voice is for that time compared to others. It is a monument. It's gnarly.
And why like it wasn't like really well received necessarily because it is very
Mhm.
different and
Mhm.
very much like a creation of art instead of a story of adventure. Although those early books of his that are just like semi-autobiographical like boating stories, I
Yeah.
think were somewhat more popular because they were just like straightforward adventures. But we haven't hit like the modernist age at this point where like you start conceiving of books as like interior psychology or like sort of frames of like being staged plays with like a background to them. Everything's still like pretty one-dimensional of like plot, morality, adventure.
Yeah, just humor me. I'll read the first three paragraphs of chapter one, and then I'll read like three paragraphs of Twain, like side by side. It might be kind of fun to, these monoliths of American literature. Um, Chapter one, a mute goes abroad a boat on the Mississippi.
Which does sound like a joke, as Daniel Handler points out in his preface, does sound
Sorry,
like the opening to
a
a
mute
joke.
goes aboard. I don't have the Daniel Handler preference on
I
mine though.
know. So I was going to ask you this, but
Shoot.
we'll talk about that in a minute.
I have Lemony Snicket's on mine. That's weird.
Yeah.
Which is weird. I saw him. He was friends. with one of my professors in my MFA, and so he came and we got to have drinks with him and like do a workshop with him and stuff. Super nice guy, but he wears a three
Amazing.
piece. He wears a three-piece suit to everything.
Always.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
he's
super sharp.
we hung out. He's been a longtime supporter of Open Letter and Delkey Archive, which is why he wrote this intro and
Oh,
has
cool.
bought and been subscriber and so on and so forth. But Chloe and Aiden hung out with him. We all hung out together, and Chloe was showing off her backflips to him.
Yeah, he's so nice, like and so humble for being a wildly successful, rich author. It
Yeah,
was really cool. All right, so here's the opening joke, I guess. A mute goes aboard a boat on the Mississippi. At sunrise on a 1st of April, there appeared suddenly, as Manco Capac at the Lake Titicaca, a man in cream colors at the water side in the city of St. Louis. His cheek was fair, his chin downy, his hair flaxen, his hat a white fur one with a long fleecy nap. He had neither trunk, valise, carpet bag, nor parcel. No porter followed him. He was unaccompanied by friends. From the shrugged shoulders, titters, whispers, wonderings of the crowd, it was plain that he was, in the extremest sense of the word, a stranger. Like
yep.
feels like super modern.
Feels
Like
super
cool.
modern. It's also like this is like just to pause you for 1 second. This is the perfect like where these footnotes. So I don't know what edition I sent you, Brian. The Delkey one is based on. It's on the back here. The Delkey one
I,
is
I have no
the
footnotes.
Okay, so this is one from, oh, it doesn't say who the publisher was, but it has introduction and annotations of H. Bruce Franklin from 1967. But the
Hmm.
footnotes in this, I actually hate footnotes, but I like them here because they're very reminiscent of like how you would teach this book in an English class. So, like, for
Sure.
instance, like you need to note that it is the April 1st, it's April Fool's Day. The whole book's going to take place from dawn on April Fool's till the end. The Man in Cream colors is one of the things that you have to pay attention to because there's no identifying markers for most people except for like a piece of clothing. And sometimes it changes. And two people will be the same person with two different representations. Then the like Manak Kapaket late Titicaca. Anyone know? That is the
I know Lake
incarnation of the
Titicaca because I've
sun.
I've seen Beavis and Butthead, so I'm very familiar with
I
Lake
was thinking the
Titicaca.
same thing, same thing. But the first Inca, an incarnation of the sun, appears there as a mysterious stranger at that lake, hence the reference and
Okay.
the referring to stranger, and also then the fact that it has the cheek was fair, chin downy, hair flaxen, had a white fur one, long fleecy nap, combines four elements of bird, vegetable, wild animal, and tame animal, and is a reference to Revelation and the fact that the boat and the whole story is supposed to be like a representation of the apocalypse. So like there's like so much baked in there that like without these footnotes, I would have not. I would just been like, oh yeah, that's cool. Let's go along. And they do read like that English professor who's like, okay, slow down. Look at what this is. This is very, very scripted. It's not just like I'm tossing this off as like a writing exercise or something that's indulgent. This is like crafted.
But yeah, but it feels like he shook it out of his sleeve.
Hmm.
And like that's the magic trick.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the mastery that is like so humbling, at least from like a craft standpoint as a writer. It's just like you feel like you're wrestling with a giant when you read something like this. You're like, oh
Like
damn, that's how it is.
people were fucking smart. Like and the
Yeah.
fact that like one of the things that's crazy about
You
Melville
need an
before you read,
Oxford English dictionary because like I remember reading Moby Dick, there's like
yeah,
certain like the diction and the word choice is so to that time, to that place that there's not I don't understand what the words mean. It's like, oh, that's a particular color for a whale bladder when it's floating on the surface of a yeah, I don't use words like that.
no, and
And
like
I think
structures of them.
I think that's why for me the especially last night, but I think that's why in this case the footnotes were overwhelming because there is that level of like Brian, you're saying like we're both saying like he's so smart. You're writing at a level, reading at a level that is so above what we have as a standard today. And I feel like the footnotes are overwhelming because it points out it's like every fifth word and like no I know I know I'm stupid in relation to this book
Well,
and
yeah, because
it's
like
so distracting to be
yeah,
like
yeah.
the fluffy nap and like here's all the explanations and like I would have just been good with fluffy nap.
So
Okay.
it
Yes,
does
that's
fade out.
okay. I didn't need more than that.
So there are times where it fades out and there's not that many footnotes at all, and it lets
Yeah.
the story progress. I think it does a good balance of that, where it like gives you these frameworks so that you can then read. And I think I would like to make the argument that like one of the reasons that it's so modern and so like seems of our time and whatnot, and that the footnotes are helpful, is that this is one of those rare books from that period of time in which the reader has to be active. The reader's not passive. Like most literature writing from that period of time is very passive. You know, you're like watching a TV show, but it's in book form, sort of vibe to it. And that's, you know, the way a lot of books are now. But this book is similar to like Cortázar and the Modernists, where you have to be involved. So like if you don't pick up, like you don't need all of the footnotes. I agree. And like a lot of them I skimmed. Some of them I just like, what is, and then it'd be like, oh, okay, that's the Lake Titicaca. Like, I don't know the reference. Like, I'm glad that that reference is there. That does mean something, but you don't necessarily need them. But they do invite you to be a more active reader in a book that's like constantly tricking you, where the book's basically like, who is the confidence man? And like the entire question of like, who is the liar? Like, confidence man is a pun, where it's like, who is the snake oil salesman on this boat? Who is like, you know, the gamesmen? And it seems to be like many people. And the other is like the general question of, do you have confidence in man, in mankind? Is there a way to have
Mhm.
confidence in something? Like the number of times in this section that someone asks, like, do you have confidence in me, is like absurd. The word confidence must show up like 40 times.
Yeah.
And it's like such like a little pun, and like keeps going after that. That I like the footnotes to like give me a frame where I then know, okay, I need to pay attention to this. I can't just like sit back and let it roll over. Otherwise, I'll just be lost. And I feel like the first time I read this, I was lost at
Oh,
some point.
yeah. I feel lost with the footnotes, and that's why the going to the audiobook has been helpful. But Brian, just to illustrate to you the footnotes, because you said you didn't have them. So
Yeah.
where you stopped reading with, it was in the extremest sense of the word, a stranger. There's one more line. So like
Uh-huh.
that's there on page one of the book, and the rest is footnotes.
Yep.
So you
And the
have
next
like,
two pages are footnotes.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then so like the first page, it's barely half a page of book text and then footnotes. And then the second page is half book text, half footnotes. Page three,
It,
the book text ends here,
yep.
and then the rest is footnotes. So like this is about the time last
Like
night where
three
like
quarters. Yeah.
where like
And then
the
and
swing
then
states are starting to shade into colors, and this is where I shut down.
Yeah, fair enough. If you flip to pages 8 and 9, though, there's one footnote. Like that's where
Yeah.
like it does build up in like certain points where it's like, okay, clearly there's like method to this. That part that you're talking about though, those first pages, that's where I was sending you guys the text message about Merle, who's referenced the Bandit of Ohio. Fuck Ohio. Also, forgot to start this out.
Fuck
Is
Ohio,
Pennsylvania
fuck
replaced
Pennsylvania,
Ohio as the worst
fuck
state of the
Oklahoma.
I think Pennsylvania might be the worst one now. They're worse than Ohio. They fucked this all. But like the Bandit of Ohio mural, who then has a footnote about like one of the bloodiest and most charming of all outlaws, became the head of the Mystic Clan. He's the one that I sent you guys the Wikipedia about, where he wanted to lead a slave rebellion so that there would be enough dissent so that he could take over the South and have his like criminal empire based in New Orleans, which is like a wild fucking, like you said, Brian, comic book aspect to like this dude's life. And also like, yeah, bandits. Hell yeah. Let's giddy up.
I didn't go down that wormhole, but it might. There's this interesting conspiracy about this thing called the Golden Circle that the South was interested in, and it involves the Caribbean islands as well. Of like this golden circle of the South and the Caribbean islands and the Gulf being like that's their domain. I wonder if it's involved in that,
The Mystic Clan.
but New Orleans would be right in the center of the Golden Circle.
But that's one of those things where like I do like the footnotes because I wouldn't know who that is. And I probably wouldn't have looked it up. I would have thought it was fake. But then it was like really interesting to me because like I don't, in terms of history, you say 1840 or whatever, I'm like, okay, I don't know, man. That was like back when there was Wild West, pre-Civil War, all that kind of stuff, but I don't really know what that was like. And like to see like, oh yeah, there's so many references in this first chapter to like bloodshed. The fact that the mute goes to get on board and is writing like Beatitudes essentially. It's is that from that's not from Ecclesiastes. That's from somewhere else. It's from uh duh, duh, duh. Thank you. Footnotes, Corinthians 1. All of his quotes are from Corinthians. And he's writing these things like, charity thinketh no evil. Charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity endureth all things. And everyone's like, get this fucking guy. They knock
Boo!
him over. They're like attacking him. And there's like so much bloodshed that's referenced in the margins of that first chapter that you're like, okay, I see where the idea that this is about like kind of an apocalypse or like a coming to a moment of like mankind, and like he could be seen as a Jesus figure that's being crucified by a crowd. There's a
Yeah.
reference to like him getting his hat bashed in, which could be like the crown of thorns and
Yeah,
the
you just have to
vinegar
be
poured on.
careful. Just don't let. I know in America, you just got to be really careful. I don't know if people know that Bethlehem is in Palestine. So I don't know anybody that was ever born in Bethlehem that we might lift up and exalt at any given time. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I believe there's also a Bethlehem, Pennsylvania,
there we
like
go. That's
place of
probably there.
horror.
Yeah, that's a red state. So
How many
definitely
people
there.
in Pennsylvania can we actually piss off? I mean, fuck the Phillies and the 76ers and the Eagles and the Flyers. Fuck Pittsburgh. Let's do this.
It's
Uh,
almost like Pennsylvania is this just island of garbage.
it's like a just floating in the middle of the East Coast being shitty. S-
I
uh,
see what you guys did there.
Yep.
Hey.
So anyways, Brian, did you want to read the other part of the Mark Twain
Yeah,
opening
sure. So I'll
there?
give let me find so here he is talking about seeing a river as a riverboat captain. But and this is more modern than the Melville piece. Um, I stood like one bewitched. I drank it in a speechless rapture. The world was new to me, and I had never seen anything like this at home. But as I have said, a day came when I began to cease from noting the glories and the charms which the moon and sun and the twilight wrought upon the river's face. Another day came when I ceased altogether to note them. Then, if that sunset scene had repeated, I should have looked upon it without rapture and should have commented upon it inwardly after this fashion.
It's,
Um,
it's interesting because there's much more of a subjectivity in that and like a
yeah,
little purpleness.
yeah. But I thought it's very interesting. The one feels written and one doesn't.
That's
Uh,
that is curious.
one still feels fresh and one feels very of a time and a place and dated.
Yeah.
Um, one is a major talent and one is like a ridiculously intelligent major talent. Like I don't know, it's just like it just hits different.
Yeah,
It was
absolutely.
really
Absolutely.
surprising to me that this was written and researched in 1850. Um, it's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
and we're gonna get to like within the Faison story of like Alan Melville telling Herman Melville of his adventures and exploits and how Herman transforms that. Like Herman Melville did go sailing a lot, but in terms of like research at that point in time is kind of interesting. Like there's no Wikipedia, you can't Google something, you know? And like, so for anyone listening that hasn't read the book, the basic setup is that everyone's on a riverboat going from St. Louis towards New Orleans, uh, going down the Mississippi River. It's going to take place on one day. There are a ton of people. Very rarely is there a name, although I think one of the name ones that shows up in here is Mr. Roberts, which I think is really interesting. There's also a ring something. Which is an allusion to like a slang from the 1800s related to like the underground and like having fake currency, counterfeit currency was the ring is a reference to that. But the Mr. Roberts one is where I want to just pause for 1 second just to point out how this might work. So we have our mute who's coming on board the ship with his like chalkboard writing out like the charity things. Charity is like a huge part of this section. Everyone doesn't like him. They get on board. There is a black guy who's crippled, has like no, I don't, he has legs, but they're like worthless, who's asking for charity. And there's a guy with a peg leg that comes up and is like, "Go fuck yourself. You're a liar. You're a white guy and blackface, and you're not crippled, and you're a horrible liar. Nobody should give you money." And blah 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 blah. Now, in the case, and then there's the crowd's like, "Wait, who can attest for you?" And the black beggar goes forth to like list off all these people. And in the introduction, it's like, okay, of these 8 people, 5 of them appear, but ones appear that are like conflated. There's ones that might be the same person in multiple instances. The idea of like, he's like, go find the man with a weed, and that will explain everything. That could be one of 4 different characters. There's like a slipperiness within that. And then what happens there is that someone drops their business card and he covers it up. And then 2 chapters later, this guy goes up and is like, "Hey, Mr. Roberts, don't you remember me?" And he's like, "No, I don't remember you at all." And he's like, "We 6 years ago, we had this dinner, blah, 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 blah. You're this guy. If you have a business card, isn't your name on it?" And he's like, "Oh, well, that is who I am, but I don't remember meeting you." And he's like, "Oh, you must have had a brain injury." And like goes forth and like pontificates about getting hit by a horse when he was a kid and like losing your memory and all sorts of things. That business card seems to have transferred from underneath the beggar's knee to this guy to then know who he's talking to grift him and to get him to give
Yeah.
money to whatever charity he's raising money for. And then that guy's also raising money for like the widows and orphans of the Seminole country charity, which he then goes and grifts a bunch of other people with, including a guy that wears one white glove like Michael Jackson. Like this is a bizarre book in which characters and like nature of their who they are is super fluid. And like who are you paying attention to? Who is not screwing someone else?
You know, this hearing you describe it succinctly like this just makes it sound like what every stereotypical American tourist thinks Europe is like a
Oh
Europe,
yeah.
like a cruise, like everyone's gonna try to pickpocket you, keep your hands. And so like, yeah, but it's the opposite. It's like all the pickpockets are on a single cruise because they think they're gonna get lucky, but they're just all pickpockets.
What's that Instagram feed you keep sending me where it's like this lady with binoculars, how to be
Oh my
safe?
God,
Yeah.
Victoria. I'm in love with her. She got engaged the other day, and I was like,
Uh-oh.
why? Like, why would anyone? So this is an Instagram, I think it's called Victoria's Way. It's a woman who goes on any number of trips, seemingly traveling forever, and like explains how to keep yourself safe. But the way that she keeps herself safe is basically like the most paranoid thing I've ever seen in my life.
It's
Like it's
such
so far beyond.
nonsense.
It has to be a parody, and
If
yet it does not ever
if the
flinch.
next door app was a person, it's her.
Yeah, yes, yes.
A strange person was walking their dog, picking something up behind it with a bag. Keep your eye out for them. Like,
Yep. She's like, what
Blue-doo-doo.
I do first when I get into a hotel room is put a band-aid over the peephole, and then I lock this, and then I check for cameras, and then I look outside and I lock the windows and blah blah, blah. And you're just like, dude, do you? And she had one the other day about what she does at a concert to keep herself safe, and it's like sit really far away because then people can't throw things on you, like you won't get hit by objects being thrown, and you're like, who the fuck worries about that at a concert? Like,
How is
not
she
anyone.
not, how is she not just straight up agoraphobic? I
And
mean, this
like,
is such a waste of everything.
and she's being filmed. Someone's there filming her. She's not filming herself. These
Oh
shots are
shit.
too
Oh
far
shit. Who
back.
is it?
Someone's there. It's insane. If it's a parody, it's the best Andy Kaufman parody I've ever seen. If it's not a parody, I am terrified that this woman exists in the world.
what's interesting though in reading this book, is this like with this these patterns and these cycles that we're seeing of like the grift and it keeps I'll take from you and then oh I gave it to them and they take from me and it like just kind of passes it along and it's almost like that like 3 card Monty kind of thing here, right? Like where's where's the grift happening? Where's the con that's happening?
You when
Have you
you
Um,
guys
say
seen
when you say three
Maverick?
card Monty, I'm like,
yeah.
you guys want to talk about the Monty Hall problem? I'm obsessed with it right now, but I'm not going to do this.
But like it's reminiscent of like you see it in other literary pieces. Like we had mentioned Innocents Abroad, where these idiot Americans show up in the Holy Land and like, oh, this line right here is where the cross was dragged. Oh wow. And they're like, let me get some of this dirt. Well, that'll be $5. Okay, $5 for this dirt. Okay, cool. I can take it with me. Well, no, it'd be $10. Oh, okay. And this little pool, this puddle here was made from the tears of Mary.
Yep.
Oh, $20. You can have like, and they're just these
Relics of the
poor,
cross.
these poor people. Oh no. It
Everyone's
has that
everyone's a
aspect to it.
sucker. It's like a
Yeah.
P.T. Barnum send up in some ways. It's
Yep.
like everyone's a sucker
Yeah.
to be taken. and they all get taken over and over and over again. Even like one of the interesting characters in this section is the scholar, like the kid who then one of our guys, I think it's the gray suit guy with the weed, the guy with the weed that gets sort of referenced and gets talked to where they're like, "Oh, do you know the black beggar?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, he's a good guy. No worries about that." I think he goes to the scholar and is like, "What are you reading?" He's like, "Tacitus." It's just this guy sucks. He just hates everything. He's a cynic, blah blah blah. And he's trying to take advantage of this young sophomore collegian. And then he ends that, and then the collegian immediately turns to the guy that's selling stock and is like, "Oh, I'm gonna fuck this guy over. I'm gonna get his stock because I know that it's gonna go up. I've overheard this story. I know what's going on about like how they've been bear taken." In terms of stock bears, like the bear market, and gotten screwed. I'm going to take advantage of him. Everyone's just like flipping. They're like, "You want to take this from me? I will go screw this other dude. Then that's fine." NBD. All money circulates. The other thing that's interesting to me in here about going back to the violence is how much it hates Mormons. Like there's a lot of anti-Mormon sentiment in here that's baked in, and it is the point in time where Mormonism has started. It's totally a grift. Everyone knows that it's a grift, and they have a society that's in Illinois that this puts in Minnesota instead, but in Illinois where there's like they pronounce the or they invoke and act under one of the Mormon tenets about like blood atonement, and like there's lots of murders, and like it's a very violent Mormon society. And the people in here are just like, yeah, like the goddamn Mormons and don't like them. And I think that's wonderful because that was such a super grift. And to this day now is like, normalized. It's been sane washed to a point where like we just are like, yeah, Utah's Mormon land. Okay, that's fine. And it's truly not. Like it's truly like the fakest of new religions next to Scientology. Also, I guess the Mormons are going to boycott us now, but that's fine. I mean, we weren't getting their ad money anyways. We drank too much Coke.
Well, it's
Not
interesting because you
enough,
think about like,
not enough dirty cokes.
so the Mormons go out to Utah in what, like 1847 or something like that.
I think it's after
Um,
this book, in fact.
it'd be before if this is 1850, right?
1847, exactly.
Oh, the book is exactly 1847. Oh, okay.
Oh,
Um,
that's when the Mormons arrive in Salt Lake.
It's
but
47?
Yeah, July 22nd, 1847.
Yeah, that's what I was
okay,
gonna say. It's like it's simultaneous.
okay.
Hmm.
But like again, to think about the time and the place, who in their right mind would want to be out there?
Yeah,
It
exactly.
must mean you have no other place to go.
I'm sorry. You're right. This is 57. So it's 10 years after.
And so it's interesting when they're talking about it that way, where it's like, I don't know, after, for instance, Rochester being the burnt over land, right? Or whatever they call it, where
This whole
uh,
region.
if your grift don't go there because they've been grifted so many times, whether it's Mormons or Fox Sisters or
Mhm.
whatever movement you want to do, like Rochester's had it.
Yep.
Uh, it's like you have like everywhere east of the Mississippi knows what you're doing. All right, we're going to Utah. Where?
Yeah. Nobody's
What
gonna
is
bother
that?
us there.
It's a territory.
I mean, so many of them die. There's that great book, Under the Banner of Heaven, that's about like the Mormon history by John Krakauer. That book is really quite good and kind of goes through all of this and talks a lot about the violence that's baked into the religion and like some of the stuff that's referenced in here. But it is, I mean,
Do they die in Everest because he or that's a different one.
that's a different
Okay.
one. What is that called though? I was gonna say
Oh,
in
that
thin
book?
air, into thin
Into
air.
Thin Air. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, it's got mountain in the title too, doesn't it? It's got something.
We got in trouble for that one for not telling the story correct. I guess people get upset about that. But
Yeah, people get upset about everything unless
geez.
Trump is. Now that Trump's in charge, we don't have to worry about getting upset. You can say anything you want. You can tell
No,
the
but
truth. You can slur people. It's fine.
to get back to it, there's like this, it's become like a cliche at this point, right? Where it's the man that shows up in the white suit or the cream suit,
Hmm.
and he's gonna sell the Simpsons a monorail.
I was just gonna say the
Or
same thing.
right? Or there's a great Clint
Just the
Eastwood
music man,
movie,
babies.
The Outlaw Josie Wales, and there's
Yeah.
some guy wearing a white suit, and he's trying to sell you this drink that does everything, and the character spits on him with his on the lapel, and he goes, "How is it at getting out stains?" And then the next scene, they're on the riverboat and he's using it and dabbing it and trying to get the stain out of his clothes. It's become a cliche, and
Yeah.
to the point where it was almost a cliche even then when it
I
was
yeah,
when it
that's
was
true.
written.
And like that's one of the things that's interesting about this is that since everyone is, and you don't have a lot of identifying factors. There's the guy with the weed, the gray suit, the guy with the glove, the scholar. Like those are generally how they're referred to, but they're all liars. And like
Yeah.
one of the things that shows up in the introduction that's interesting is talking about like we haven't gotten too much in the Christian aspects of it, but there's a lot of biblical references. Like it's loaded with biblical references, and that's a huge part. But he talks too about like Hindu myths and Vishnu and like transformations of characters through like this evolution sort of myth or like basis for religion and how that like leads also to like an apocalypse and that's also there and that's where the footnotes are helpful because it's like that part I don't really know. I mean, the Bible, I don't know that well, and I don't really like intend to. I mean, I should, but I don't intend to like really get into it. But this I really don't know, and so like dropping that in there as footnotes is super helpful to see like, oh, there's also this other total aspect that's not just the Judeo-Christian way of looking at things, but a little bit more like Eastern. There's a lot of references to people coming from the East that could be either like east like Asian east or like the east of the country. There's a lot of like little hints dropped in there that it's like a bigger like how do you reconcile things? Like in that sort of like more Buddhist Hindu way of thinking of like how do these opposites get reconciled? How can you have like a liar and have any confidence in anyone when everyone's a liar? Like what do we do? Is there any confidence in humankind when like every individual aspect of it is a lie?
This is like the first conspiracy theory book, isn't it?
That's so interesting that you say that. You might be right.
Because like I'm thinking like so we're talking about Melville being smart and how he was writing, but then because he didn't have footnotes in the original, are we assuming that back when this book came out, the readers were also smarter? Like, is this just like all the references to biblical and Mormons, like these are things that were going on in the world and that people were aware of? Um,
I'm sure that biblical references would have been
Yeah.
very well understood,
Mhm.
but not necessarily all the others.
I don't think
yeah.
so either, but people had a lot more time and a lot
Mhm,
fewer distractions. So like I
mhm,
think like the intelligence level of readership would be I would argue it was presumably higher
mhm.
in the way that we're talking about or that you're talking about. Like there's
Yeah.
I mean most people are reading that are educated and of an ilk are reading in Greek and Latin like they're and no French and like are familiarized with like certain like culture of that sense. And then, then we start getting like radio, TV, internet, cell phones, and like your access to like that information in your brain goes down, and you just know that it's
Yeah.
externalized in a way that you don't need to know it. But I feel like like saying someone's smarter is a hard thing, like in
Right.
terms of IQ, but like in terms of familiarity and like access, like internal access, it was probably higher. So what are you gonna
Yeah, I
do?
have I have like a it's not a fully percolated idea, but it's something I wanted to explore more. But like in Europe and the United States, around like late 1700s to mid 1800s, if you're white, and somewhat well-to-do, you're like in this sweet spot where there's enough automation, where you can have food without having to, you know, like homestead or something, right?
Mhm.
In America, you could have slaves doing work for you, for instance, but it's not quite industrial revolution yet. So you have time and you have zero distraction, like you're saying. There's maybe a newspaper, you have your basic library, but
Maybe.
you have enough automation to where you can survive, which affords you a lot of time. But it's also
Right.
time where there is no distraction whatsoever.
And you're not
Right.
near anyone. This is like one
Yeah.
of my bits for my want to do stand-up comedy is like you're gonna marry someone who lives 7 miles away that you see once a year. Because like getting that 7 miles is real hard. And so like you're reading books and Johnny's falling out of an apple tree. Like there's
But you see this though, like in that time frame, you see with how they write. Obviously the like the Greek and Roman influence and biblical influence in it, and you can also see it like in the letter writing with the word with the time, the consideration to put the idea down fully in letter
Mhm.
writing and how important that was. And you read these letters, you're like, shit, dude, my letters are like, hey, what's up?
Like,
What am
you
I?
awake? You
I'm
awake?
like, there's like Funyun crumbs on my on my letters or whatever. Like this, I'm an idiot. This is, but no, it's a different time, and there actually was time, and it was a different education, like you're saying, with Latin or with Greek, and yeah, and you get a sense for that, and especially with something like Melville and his breadth of knowledge, you really feel the presence of it as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the 19th century doom scrolling.
It's just reading a Greek poem.
This
Yeah.
oh look at this guy,
Tacitus.
this poor one-legged man is just trying to get some money for wait, he's not even one-legged.
Yeah.
It's
I
crazy
feel
though,
like
because like
the peg leg comes back as a
depending
pun.
on the
I don't
text you
remember.
get, like you can read one of his books and teach queer theory if you want. Like you can take one of his books and read it on a freaking pride float and it works perfect. And you could read one of his books and take it to seminary school and say, you're going to want to, if you want to learn, here, read this.
Yeah.
And like you'd have to be in divinity school in order to get a handle of it. Or like it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah,
It's very
it's really frustrating.
chameleon-esque. Frustrating
Very frustrating.
because
It's like, how do you even like
Not
measure that?
fair.
yeah.
It's not
That's
fair.
what I was saying. Like it's and like Rodrigo being able to mimic it or not even just it's yeah,
I
I
wouldn't
can't
want to wrestle with it. I'll
When
tell
you
you that. Like it's wrestling with a monster to try to ape this is good luck.
When you speak of conspiracy theories, it reminded me of this section, which I'll read the line and then the footnote because this is amazing. I did not know this. I've read this book before. I've read the footnotes before. I did not remember this, and it's incredible. So they talk about like, are you a Mason? Which is a reference to the Freemasons, and then says that corpse of calamity, which the gloomy philosopher parades, is but his good enough Morgan. Now, good enough Morgan is hyphenated. I don't know what that is. Footnoted. In 1826, a William Morgan, who was about to publish a book revealing the secrets of Freemasonry, was kidnapped. A corpse found in the Niagara River was asserted to be his. When this identification was challenged, Thurwell Weed, a prominent anti-Mason, supposedly said the corpse was, quote, a good enough Morgan until after the election. Hence, a good
Jesus.
enough Morgan was any device which could be used as a temporary means of influencing voters.
Damn.
Boom.
That's cold.
Right? Right?
Jesus.
So,
Wow.
Don't
yeah,
fuck with the Freemasons, I guess.
won't fuck with the Freemasons.
Again, conspiracy theory, doom
What I'm
scroll.
saying, Niagara River election, like all of
Morgan
this is like just right
Morgan
there.
fucked around and found out.
Morgan,
19th century.
Morgan fucked around in 1826 and found out.
I'm
Incredible. I don't know.
having a really hard time reading this as a fun or funny book.
Really? Because I find it like hilarious.
I
I
mean,
mean,
I went into it wanting it to be that, but like
but
it's
it's too real.
like our country just reelected a shyster and I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word, but like
Yeah.
and the whole book, I don't know, man. I don't
To be
know.
fair,
It's like
Netanyahu is saying that he's going to end the war and as a gift to Trump.
I mean, yeah, we'll take it. Like,
Everything sucks. I find it very funny. I know what you mean. Like it is a little bit too like, oh my God. And like what you're saying, Brian, like watch a lot of those podcasts and or listen to podcasts, watch a lot of shows that are about like kind of cult beliefs and like various like ways that you get roped into like the sort of like self-help care side of things in particular. And like where, believe what you want to believe. I don't have any objection to that, but like the money part of it and like sex and power parts of it are unsettling. There's so much of that now. So it really does hit home in that way. But I also like it's funny to me because it's like it is the same thing and it's there. And it's just saying baldly, like, this is a thing that's going on. Like there's no like, we should hem and haw and sit on the fence and like, be respectful. This book is just basically like these people are criminal, but also funny. So
Yeah,
who is
it's
the
like
confidence
I don't
man?
know. It feels like listening to a Bill Cosby comedy album at Diddy's house right now. It's just
Jesus.
it's
I
it's
do.
hard it's
I don't
hard
know
to
if you've
find it funny.
I don't know if you guys get this, but one of the things I think is super funny is on Instagram, any sort of ad that I see, someone underneath says, "Good try, Diddy." Like I think because I clicked on that comment once, now every time that comment exists, and it's every ad, doesn't matter what it's for, just says, "Good try, Diddy." And I'm like, fuck yeah, I want to be the guy that does says that on every ad too. Like that's wonderful. This is a good way to like de-teeth like advertising. But you're right. It is a little close to home. It is a little bit too much. I mean, we could do our
It's
favorite lines, but
perfect.
perfect. Like, who do you
Yeah.
think is the confidence man? Like, is the black beggar telling the truth? Is he a liar? Is the mute and deaf? Is
I
anyone like the confidence man?
I mean, it's not called The Confidence Man, the book. It's called Confidence Man. Well, it's
Well,
called His Masquerade, but
on the title page, it does say the confidence man, his masquerade.
uh-oh. Not
And
on the
on the
uh-oh.
cover, it just says confidence man.
Yeah.
Um, but
I
it doesn't
mean,
say confidence men.
no. I'm I mean, from what I was able to retain, my money is on the guy who is speaking to the woman and
Oh, that's so
and
good.
is like and then like basically like turns it and she's like, well, can we be friends? And he says, and this is my line of the week, is he says, no one can befriend me who has not confidence. Like
Right.
it's like negging her basically. So my money's on that guy.
That guy
Seems
for
like
sure.
a good front runner.
I forgot one of my favorite parts too is I think the scholar, I think the student. One of my favorite parts with the student is when the student's like, I want to buy your shares. And he's like, I'm not gonna make this my office. He's like, come on, bro, I'll give you some cash, you give me some shares, we're gonna work this out. No big deal. And then he buys the shares, and the guy's like, I have some land that I would like to offer you in this city, totally built city, totally self-functioning. You just get some land. And apparently that too was a common grift in the 1800s where they're like, buy this. And people are like, okay, okay. And then they buy it and it's like a swamp and there's nothing there and it's just worthless. I really like, and the fact that the student's like, no, man, I don't need no, I'm not going to buy your land, and like hard pass. I think that guy's in on it. I think they're all in on it, but I think that part is particularly fun. But
What
the
about you,
part that you
Brian?
mentioned with the woman, super funny. Takes $20 from her. That's a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah.
Brian, who do you got?
I'll go with this one. Um, the will of man is by his reason swayed.
Seriously, that's a good one too. I do have one last thing that I marked here that I want to say is he opens up the Tacitus book and he's like, opening at random read, in general, a black and shameful period lies before me. And I just wrote, dark winter is coming. And I think that was prescient too. I read this a few days ago, and sure enough, dark winter is here.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts you guys want to put out there?
Did Brian ever read the Mark Twain part?
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah, I read a little bit.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, this is where my
Oh, no,
brain
it's
is at
fine.
today.
Anyways, if you're listening, rate and review us, follow us on YouTube, smash that like button, share the podcast with everyone. You can find it on Apple and Spotify and elsewhere. Tell your friends, tell your lovers. I don't know why that one came out, but do do everything you can. It'd be nice to have more listeners to this. We'll be up. I forget where we're going to next week, but the reading guide will be in the show notes. And we'll be back next week to talk about the second of 5 episodes on Confidence Man by Herman Melville.
Do you think was it ironic that when I was in Michael Vick's book club, we read Old Yeller?